Most of my readers and followers are not vegan, so they're seeing these pieces and hopefully thinking a little bit differently about some things.
As a vegan, do you ever feel like you're living in a parallel universe, aware of things that many others don't even seem to notice, let alone acknowledge? I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse podcast. We talk with vegans from around the globe who, like you, are living lives of integrity and compassion with an eye toward justice. Through their personal stories, you'll come to see that you're not an outlier. In fact, you're part of an entire posse of individuals who aren't just keeping the peace, they're creating it through their food choices and beyond. You won't be saddling up, but you're in for the ride of your life. Welcome to the Vegan Posse. I'm Chrissy Benson, host of the Vegan Posse. First of all, if you haven't yet picked up your copy of the vegan women's fiction classic, Marrying Myself, by me, Christine Melanie Benson, what are you waiting for? It's the perfect summer beach read, and it's got a vegan protagonist. And by making it an international bestseller, you can help normalize veganism through the arts. Grab your copy via Amazon or find all the info on my author website, ChristineMelanieBenson.com. Next, if you'd like to go beyond just fictional vegans and connect with some real life vegans for contemplation, camaraderie, and maybe just a little vegan venting, join us via Zoom any or every Tuesday evening at 5:30 p.m. Central for Vegan Peace using the link below. Vegan Peace is a live, unrecorded call, so no self-censorship necessary on your part or mine. Hope to see you there. Finally, I do have some coaching spots available. Email me directly at christinembenson@gmail.com for personal coaching, vegan lifestyle coaching, and or IFS coaching. And now for this week's guest, Sadie Freely. Sadie Freely is the founder and editor of Laughs Not Slaughs, that's spelled SLAUGHS, a humor publication for vegans and animal advocates. She also writes FECK, a Substack newsletter exploring consent, pleasure, and freedom. Sadie believes vegan humor can offer much needed catharsis and camaraderie to animal advocates, while also sneakily challenging the norms and assumptions held by not yet vegans. She is often full of beans. So enjoy this conversation with Sadie Freely. Sadie, welcome to the Vegan Posse. Are you ready for the ride of your life?
I am.
And you're clearly off camera, which is unfortunate because you're so adorable. I happen to know that because I've seen you many times in person. But yeah, can you tell us just briefly why you prefer to stay off camera?
I want to maintain some privacy because the topics that I write about have to do with sexual liberation and animal liberation, and I just don't want to be tempting any internet trolls.
Yeah, that makes total sense. We haven't had many audio only guests apart from the early days of the podcast where we were exclusively audio. But we have had several guests who have privacy concerns. And of course, we're happy to accommodate any special requests in that regard. And especially these days, it's funny how speaking out about principled beliefs can get you into trouble. As you probably know from your experience with the show, I like to take it way back and just hear a little bit about people's childhood experience and just how it was for you growing up, whether you ever thought about the animals in our so-called food system.
I really didn't as a child, unfortunately. So for me, I didn't really give that any thought until my mid-20s.
Yeah, which is so common because as children, we often love animals, but We're not encouraged to think about them beyond their very compartmentalized place as animal companions or creatures to visit in zoos, kind of like a
Right.
museum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened in your early 20s that kind of got you thinking about some of these things?
Well, it was actually one moment that I remember. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and my aunt came to visit me, and we did a little road trip together. And I remember I ordered something with meat in it. And she said something about how the animal's emotions are transferred through the food into us. And I wasn't, I was just totally surprised and caught off guard and had never really thought of anything along those lines. And she mentioned John Robbins' book, The Food Revolution.
Mm.
And so when
And
I
I'm
got,
just curious, was she eating meat at this meal or no?
I don't remember.
Okay.
She's definitely she wasn't a vegetarian, but at that meal maybe she did eat a lot of vegetarian
Mm-hmm.
food. She enjoyed choosing vegetarian options, but she never was vegetarian or vegan.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, but she mentioned this book. Maybe she had just heard about it, or I don't even think she read the book. But so then when I got back home after that trip, I got the book and I read it, and it just changed my life. And the way that and my awareness. And I couldn't believe that I didn't know any of that beforehand.
Right, right. It's
And
so funny. It's so funny to me how often we do get that spark of awareness, that spark of consciousness from people who are not themselves vegan or even vegetarian.
yeah, yeah, it's
It's
so
wild.
interesting.
Yeah. Is your aunt still around?
No, unfortunately, she died a few years ago.
Just so interesting where these moments come from. Do you remember what it was in the book, like any particular passages or points mentioned in the book that stuck with you or hit you at the time?
It was, gosh, I could go back now and probably reread it and be reminded, but it was really the treatment of I mean, I think he covered, the health issues and environmental issues, but for me, it was really the mistreatment and abuse of animals and factory farming and slaughterhouses and all
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And babies being taken from their mothers, and just I think he pretty much went through all of those issues.
Right, right. Well, actually, regarding people who aren't vegan, it's very funny because John Robbins's books, the book that's been mentioned the most on the podcast in terms of what turns people vegan has been his book Diet for a New America. And it's just interesting to me because John Robbins has done so many wonderful things and such great work. And my understanding is that he himself is not fully vegan or vegetarian.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting to me. But anyway, so moving back to your own personal story, after you read this book, what happened? What did you do?
So I I think I pretty quickly stopped eating meat after that, like right away. Maybe not right away with fish, but soon after. And then it took me maybe, I think, about a year before I went fully vegan and totally stopped eating dairy. I had a harder time not eating cheese and eggs. So that ended up taking until I got to do 2 weeks of a sort of a self-made internship at the farm sanctuary. It wasn't through their official internship program, but I had 2 weeks during the winter when they needed extra help. And so I was able to go stay there for those 2 weeks. And the day that and everyone eats vegan there on
This
the,
was in California or
yeah,
which?
yeah, at the time there was a farm sanctuary in Northern California.
Okay.
So the day that I arrived was the day that I went vegan.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. What was it like being the unofficial intern at Farm
I,
Sanctuary?
it was amazing. I loved that time.
What kind of stuff did you?
My job was mostly to muck the chicken coop every day, and then it would help with other mucking, a lot of shit shoveling, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But then I had time other than that to spend with different animals and got to know some of them.
Yeah. Tell us about that. What was that
Oh
experience
my
like?
gosh. Well, there were a few animals. Mario was a calf that had recently been rescued, and so he was too small to be in with the other cows. So he pretty much got to roam freely on the grounds, and he was just very playful and adorable. And he would sit with me and just even like put his head on my lap
Aw.
and get snuggles.
So was he from the dairy industry or from
Yes.
the beef?
Yeah.
Yes.
He
Okay.
had been rescued. He had been born, I think with a broken leg or an injured leg. And
Mm.
so the dairy workers had tossed him onto what they call a dairy cow dead pile.
Mm.
And he was perfectly fine except for his leg injury. And so when the truck driver came up to the pile to remove the dead cows, he found Mario and rescued him and took him to a local vet. And then they contacted the farm sanctuary.
Wow, that's amazing to me that the driver did
Yeah.
that. That makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
So, how fast did Mario grow? I guess you were only there 2 weeks, so you weren't going to see
I
huge
didn't,
growth
yeah,
spurts. Yeah.
yeah. But I checked back and I saw pictures on the website of him. He got pretty big. And then there was a pig that loved belly rubs named Lassen. There was a little duck named Isis who had some leg problems. And so I would go visit her almost every day. And she
Mm.
was scared of me for the first, like every day she got a little bit less scared. And then she would just approach me a little bit more each day until finally she was coming up to me and sitting on my lap as well.
So sweet. So that just sounds really interesting, getting to know animals that I'm guessing you didn't have much chance to be in contact with, cows or ducks
And
or
pigs.
pigs.
Yeah, it was quite an experience.
So you were how old at that time?
So I think that was 27 or 28. I think it was
Okay.
27 when I read The Food Revolution.
Okay. Okay. So you were still pretty young. So after that experience, you were officially vegan. And what happened from there in terms of your vegan evolution?
Well, it wasn't a totally straight path. I still had some struggles after that. A few years late, it wasn't right after, but a few years into it, it was a struggle socially for me to stick with it entirely. And there was a point where I decided I knew I was vegan at heart and I still fully believed in veganism, but it felt like I just didn't want to fully restrict myself. And so I decided that I would be mostly vegan. And not and allow myself to just not always choose according to my values.
Mm. Would that be mostly in public or just
Yeah.
okay. So you were kind of a closeted vegan who would
I
play
was
an omnivore out
yeah,
in
like
public.
it started with shellfish because I figured in my mind that they didn't feel pain in the same way.
And that was for social reasons mostly, you would say, kind of to
Yeah.
just fit in and not be
Yeah.
so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just not always being in places where there was vegan food available and still wanting to eat and
Mhm.
not I just, at that time of my life, I wasn't, I guess, as dedicated and as prepared as I am now to make sure that I always have food that I want and feel good about. And
And I'm curious, how helpful was that? Like did that effectively kind of lubricate the wheels of your social life? You know, did it make it a lot easier?
I think in some ways it did. I didn't feel like I was sticking out as much or going against the grain, but it was harder for me because it wasn't aligned with how I wanted to live.
Yeah, very interesting. And I'm curious, like, was there anyone you were able to talk to about this quandary or these decisions?
I did have some vegan friends who were more dedicated than me. So a lot of it for me was dating. That was
Okay.
probably a big reason being vegan-ish, I called it. It didn't help. Like I was also trying to get healthier. I had been the years that I had been vegan since the farm sanctuary, I had been a bit of a junk food vegan.
Okay.
So I am healthy as I could have been. And even the naturopath that I ended up finding to work with on nutrition was not vegan and didn't really get that nutrition side of it. So I
Mm.
didn't have support from professionals in the
Yep.
health world. That would have been
Yep.
really helpful.
That's so interesting. And part of why I asked the question was I vividly remember one time, it was before I was vegan, but I was a committed vegetarian. And I remember it was a Thanksgiving where a friend of mine in Boston was hosting. And I decided, okay, enough of feeling not part of, enough of feeling different and isolated and not fully participating and engaging. I'm going to eat the turkey. And I did. And it was just so interesting because afterward, for me, I was like, okay, I don't feel any different. I don't feel happier. I don't
Mhm.
feel more connected to these human beings. I don't feel more part of, or just
Yeah,
there was kind of nothing changed positively when I decided, okay, I'm not going to be different anymore. I still
yeah,
felt exactly the same. So for
yeah.
me, that was a really interesting lesson. So that's kind of why I was wondering how it worked for you.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think for me, it was also like, yeah, I'm going along with what others are doing, but I'm not being known for who I am because I was basically just not showing that part of me that cares and that does feel that.
Yeah, you were maybe socializing effectively with people, but they weren't getting to know some of the deepest parts of you. Very interesting. So, when did you transition from veganish to full on vegan?
Yeah, it was sort of just a slow transition back to fully vegan. I I think I just gained more knowledge and became more sure of myself and what I believed in, and I stopped wanting to eat those foods because I was eating eggs then every once in a while. For a little while they just sounded really good to me, and that stopped. I just didn't want to. I don't know exactly. I can't describe it. I think it was
Something
just
just,
getting.
yeah, the desire just went away. It sounds like what they describe as the educational variety of a spiritual awakening where it happens
Yes.
gradually, bits and pieces of information seep in, and then at a certain point you just kind of see it for what it is. When you think about it, like an egg, it's the byproduct of the, or not the byproduct, it's a component of
Mm-hmm.
the reproductive process. It's
Yeah.
really crazy that that's something that we eat, that we
Yes,
go out of our way
daily.
to. Yeah.
Like it's a daily food for a lot of people.
Right, especially these days with the low
Mm-hmm.
carb craze and all of that. But yeah, eggs are just interesting because like I remember my brother who is vegan now, but before he was vegan and before I was vegan, at one point we were talking about eggs and just how they literally come from the inside of an animal, and how if you're vegetarian, it's weird to eat something that is literally
Mm-hmm.
part of the inside of an animal. So
Right.
you stopped kind of dabbling, you stopped
Mm-hmm.
closeting your veganism and became fully vegan. What was that like for you, socially, professionally,
Yeah,
nutritionally?
just personally, it just felt so much better. I think at the time I called it renewing my vows to veganism. And it was a relief to
Mm,
be trying to sort of be in denial about it because I wasn't even justifying that it was okay. I was just not living by my values. I was still I would still say I was 95% vegan, but
yeah.
but it just felt good to get back to my true way of wanting to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did that impact your relationships or your social life, dating, all that good stuff?
Well, I think I was just showing up more as my yeah, a couple years later is when then I finally the man that I am with now, my boyfriend, and I was able to show up to that relationship vegan, unapologetically vegan. And I didn't expect he wasn't vegan when we met, but I just shared what I wanted to with him. I held back. I mean, I held back. I could have said more.
Sure, sure.
But then he ended up listening to being curious about what I was telling him and looking into it on his own. And it was only a few months after we started dating that he said that he was going to try being vegan himself. So
How did that make you
that
feel?
that felt really good. I couldn't believe it. I was amazed, but I it's been so great because we can eat meals together and just totally get into all of the same foods and making really good food and going out to finding great vegan restaurants, and when we travel we use Happy Cow, and so it's fun.
That's great. Yeah. How was it? I mean, prior to meeting him, how was it dating for you? Because as some people listening know, I was at one point a professional matchmaker. And one thing that a lot of
I
my
did not
coaching
know that.
clients,
I didn't know that, Chrissy.
yes, yes, I was.
Mom.
Yes, I was vegan. I was vegan at that time because that was in New York City. But one thing that people often ask me, and a topic that I spoke about at Vegan Summerfest last year, was dating and relationships as a vegan, how to
Mhm.
navigate those as a vegan. So what was your approach, Sadie?
Hoped to, and if I saw someone's profile was vegetarian or vegan or anything that showed some awareness of the connection with animals, I would prioritize trying to meet those people, but there weren't very many of them.
Yeah, yeah. As you probably know, a lot of the women listening know, something like, and I don't want to say 90%, but the vast majority of people who are currently vegan are women. And the number of people who are vegan at all is minuscule,
Yeah.
maybe 1%, maybe 2%. And of those, 80, 90% are women. So
Mhm.
yeah, we vegan women have our challenge cut out for us. So yes, and as you found, I found the same thing, that just because somebody is vegan or vegetarian doesn't mean that you'll click with that person. It's not even close to sufficient, or sometimes even really helpful in my experience.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. So you're kind of hoping you'd find somebody who had vegan leanings.
I have just like a fantasy, really. I didn't,
Okay.
because the pool is so small,
Yeah.
I didn't
So
expect.
you had kind of reconciled yourself to dating a non-vegan. Gotcha. So I bet your partner now, I bet after he told you that he was interested in going vegan, if he hadn't already gleaned it, I bet it was at that point that he realized how important that is to you.
Yeah, yeah, right. I think my eyeballs popped out of my head.
Because maybe you'd been holding back before in
Yes.
terms of how much it meant to you, but once he was willing to make that leap, then you could let him know that, okay, you're actually with a radicalized,
Yes, a very passionate vegan.
passionate vegan.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. Well, that's awesome. I'm happy for you that it worked out that way. And yeah, tell me about your other relationships. How has it been for you when you do try to carry the message to people that you know, acquaintances, friends, colleagues, or do you?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised. I guess I'm continually surprised that people can come up with so many rationalizations around animals. Um, so yeah, I didn't carry the message very much and then I just realized with this renewal of my vegan vows, I realized some people in my family and acquaintances or even friends might not even know that veganism is important to me because I
Mm.
hadn't been expressing that very much. I remember a cousin kept talking to me about how she was looking for a leather couch, and she mentioned it over the course of several conversations. And finally, it just hit me. She doesn't know me and how it feels for me to be hearing her talk about this. So,
So did you ever say
yeah,
something to
yeah,
her? Okay.
I
Yeah.
did.
How did that go?
Well, again, I just was sort of surprised that to her it didn't matter what that cow's life experience and
Mm.
death had been like.
Mm.
So I didn't go into all of those details, but more I just told her that I was uncomfortable hearing her talk about it because I am aware of what that cow had
Mm-hmm.
likely,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and that I think about leather very differently.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always interesting when we realize that people sometimes have no sense of who we are when it comes to our veganism. Yeah. So, what are some of the ways that you found it's effective to carry the message, kind of help people see some things that maybe they weren't willing to see before or see before? Yes.
Because I've become a writer.
Yes.
So, yes, I realized a few years ago that I had so much in my head that I really wanted to express, and I started to write some of the ideas that were circling around in there, and that just has continued. And I've
So let's start from kind of the beginning of this process. What were some of the initial ideas swirling around in your head that you started realizing that other people aren't talking about them in the way that you were thinking about them?
well, there is a lot.
Yeah.
It's because as you know, I started out even thinking that I might try to write a memoir with a lot of these life experiences and anecdotes. And then that turned into instead writing a Substack blog around basically ideas of veganism and consent and pleasure and freedom and how those interconnect, because I was finding that a lot of people who are really interested in consent, especially after the Me Too movement. And I personally was getting more into pleasure seeking and joining spaces that were exploring sex positivity and consent and pleasure and all those things. But in those spaces, there was no connection with to consent beyond just each other as humans. And so that was I wanted to write about that and wrap my head around it and why that might be, which I still don't have the answer to.
Well, I think you do have the answer in that it's just that other people aren't acknowledging that, okay, if consent matters, that can't be limited to one particular box. It can't be limited to sexual relations between humans. It needs to be extended to what are the other realms of life where living, feeling beings are robbed of the opportunity to consent. It is interesting. Yeah.
Robbed of any body autonomy.
Right, right. And as you and a lot of people listening are aware, people like Carol Adams have written about feminism and veganism and how they relate, how essentially all of animal agribusiness is exploitation of the female reproductive system because these animals are being bred, sexually mutilated, raped, and tortured and imprisoned. So yeah, so people like Carol Adams have brought concepts of feminism to this world. But yeah, I definitely appreciate that. Again, consent became such a hot topic word in all these circles, and yet start talking about non-human animals and suddenly consent just has no relevance anymore.
Yeah, and Carol Adams, the sexual politics of meat, her book, that it was a challenge even for me to get through that book, and that's my main interest.
Right, right. Yeah. It's heavy stuff. It's heavy theoretical stuff. So I happen to know that you decided to take a different tack to carrying this message in the form of humor and satire. Tell us a little about that whole process.
Well, I was attempting to make these topics a little bit more accessible and fun to read and make the writing actually like pleasurable itself.
Right.
So you were an inspiration, Chrissy, with your humor writing.
Well, thank you.
Yes. It's so fun and funny to read your humor pieces. And I had come across some other really funny vegan humor short pieces. And so I then have, so I branched out to also writing short humor, so the Substack is more for the serious, but still light and accessible essays.
Okay, and what's the name of? Tell people where they can find the Substack.
Okay, the Substack is the publication is FECK. Yes, FECK is an acronym for exquisite carnal knowledge.
For exquisite carnal knowledge. So FECK.
Yes.
FECK, yes.
FECK, yes. Or it can be, you can just search Sadie Freely on Substack, and that's my profile name. And then that has that publication. And then I started to write the short humor over on Medium. Been writing the humor pieces for about a year. And
how do you come up with your ideas? What is your writing process like?
I used to think that I had maybe one or two ideas and that would be it for me, but they just keep coming because there are so many absurd things that we come across, especially as vegans. So I just keep getting ideas from just my daily life, and then if I think it's funny enough and it sticks in my head, and I do a lot of journaling, so I'll usually just try writing whatever ideas come to me out and see if I'm inspired to turn it into a little piece. Yeah, one of my favorite pieces I watched the Charlie Sheen docuseries on Netflix, and just a random watch. It was a few
It's
years.
I'm not familiar with it. It's about Charlie
It's
Sheen, or
about
he's
Charlie Sheen.
okay.
I didn't know a lot of what he has been doing since the 80s when I was watching him on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But he near the end of that docu-series, he said I should have become a vegetarian instead of a crackatarian, and that just stuck in my mind. And this docu-series, I mean, he is so crazy and extreme. I can't even believe he lived through all the drugs and mayhem.
Okay, see, I know
Okay, so
nothing really about him.
just wild. It was a wild ride just watching that docu-series. So then when he said he should have become a vegetarian, I just thought it would be funny to write an alternate reality story that sort of followed a similar timeline, but it's Charlie as extreme animal rights activist.
That's hilarious. I love that. I love that. Did you, yeah, what sort of responses have you gotten?
Well, it was such a fun and funny piece for me to write, but it wasn't one of my most popular pieces, I will say.
Okay, interesting.
I was also a little late to the Charlie Sheen interest, maybe.
Did you get pushback, or it just
No.
didn't really spark a lot of
I think
interest?
I think it was a little past its prime time.
Okay.
But I didn't get any pushback. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But you had fun writing it, which
Yeah, I had fun writing
says
it.
a lot. Did you come up with, like, don't give too much away, but
I was going to tell you another idea that came to me actually from listening to the Vegan Posse guest that you had on maybe 6 months ago, maybe 4 months ago. I don't remember his name, but he mentioned something about getting the side eye from someone about eating lion's mane.
that's funny. Yeah.
And so I wrote a piece called Lion's Mane and 9 Other Plant-Based Foods Forbidden from My Kitchen.
Yeah, I've seen that one. That's awesome. Yes.
It's got baby carrots and chickpeas and
right.
But that was a really fun piece for me also to write because it's taking like a righteously semantic stance on these foods that sound like animal products. But I was able to get really righteous and angry in the piece itself, which felt like it was okay. Like I normally feel like I have to hold back on that anger, but in this case it was satirical, so I could the angrier the better.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I think that's so effective. And in fact, another talk that I've given at Vegan Summerfest, I won't be at Vegan Summerfest this year, but in the past I've given talks on the use of humor and particularly satire in carrying the vegan message. And you've already just hit on some of the points that I love to highlight. By making fun of vegans, we can make our points more effectively because all the non-vegans out there are more than happy to read something that's kind of poking fun at vegans.
Yeah.
And then we can slide in some truth. Yeah.
That's
some
so
indignation in a parallel way that's where we're still making fun of ourselves, but we also get in some points that will stick with people. So yeah, I love that process. I know for me, when I write these sorts of pieces, it's really helpful to bring in some laughter for my own sake as someone with this vegan awareness. There's so much to be disheartened about that bringing in some humor is just very, very healing for myself.
That's so true. Yes, it's like self-care.
And the Charlie Sheen piece, I mean, that's kind of positive visualization. You never know.
Yes. I mean, he comes across as kind of like crazy and extreme, but also the hero of the story. And
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Did you try sending it to, anyone in his camp?
No, I didn't. Yeah.
Oh, you've got to.
I should. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
100%. 100%. Okay, so where can people find your funny stories? on
So
veganism?
those are on Medium. I started publishing them or submitting them to some Medium publications just to get readers.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them are on a publication called Dr. Funny, and a few others that are Medium based. And then I ended up following a dream of mine to create a vegan humor publication. So I now have that publication up also on Medium, and it's called Laughs Not Slaughs.
So
And I,
slaughs as in slaughter.
yeah,
SLAUGH.
yes. And so
Yes.
it's slaughs isn't a real word, but it rhymes with laughs, and laughter beats slaughter or slaughter.
Yeah. Well, maybe I've shared this with you one on one, but that that has in the past been a possibility for a title for a satire story about some sort of factory farm that wants to bring the laughter back into slaughter. Put the laughter back into slaughter.
Yes, Chrissy, I hope you write that piece. And then of course, there's the perfect publication for you to
Yeah,
publish it.
we'll see. But what kind of responses have you gotten to your writing, Sadie?
It's been good. I think most of my readers and followers are not vegan. So they're seeing these pieces and hopefully thinking a little bit differently about some things. And then since launching Laughs Not Slaughs, it's been really great to have some other vegan humor writers participate and submit their stories, and we can find each other's work. And yeah, that's been really great. Some camaraderie amongst humor writers who care
That's
about animals.
awesome. That's super cool. What about the people the people in your personal life? Have your stories kind of sparked some interest in them?
Most of my
Not so much.
Good question. Most of my friends and family don't say much about my Substack. Is more what I've shown to them.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I can see that being a little a little sensitive.
Yeah, and
A
then
little carnal.
if
Yeah.
I write a humor piece that I think a certain person will enjoy, I'll send it to them. But most of them aren't on. They're not on Medium, and they're not in this world.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That
So
makes sense.
yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations on making that dream of yours come true. That's a huge
Thank you.
accomplishment in
Thank
itself.
you.
And I mean, I will say, just reading your stories, I mean, to me, I think you're getting funnier and funnier all the time. And I love the idea of that Charlie Sheen piece. Definitely see if you can get that in front of some people. And who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
But final question, Sadie, that I like to ask all my guests. Is there a particular word that for you sums up what being vegan is all about?
I think the word would be justice.
Yeah, good one. I tend to be a fan of that word too. I was wondering if you were going to go for consent just because that's your world. Well, thank you for all that you do and for doing your part to increase the pleasure and the justice and the laughter in this world. All very helpful things, because without those things, what's even the point? We don't just want absence of harm, we want some of the good stuff too. So thank you for proactively creating more of that. And boy, do we need that in vegan circles. I feel like this is kind of a dark time for veganism. Not that it has necessarily ever been a fantastic time, but I tend to feel that it's kind of a dark time. Do you feel that way too, or is that just kind of me? Maybe amidst all your vegan humor writers,
I'm not feeling that sense.
Good. Okay. We'll say that you're right.
Yeah.
This is a bubbling, awesome, funny, positive time, and it's going to keep getting better. Yes.
That sounds great. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your paths and experience and just all the interesting stuff that you're doing. And encourage everybody to check out FECK Yes and Laughs Not Slaughs.
Thanks,
And
Christy.
we close, my pleasure, literally. And we close every episode by taking 30 seconds of silence for all the suffering animals, human and non-human, who desire, as we all do, safety, happiness, and the freedom to live out their lives without interference. So, Sadie, I invite you to join me in 30 seconds of silence for the animals, and we'll conclude with the sound of the bell. Thank you, Sadie, and thank you, Posse. See you next time. Until then, stay strong and stay true.